taken from a letter written by Abramo Segre, who wrote to his fiancée during his deportation from Italy, and through the letter you're about to hear, out of a train window on the 7th of December 1943. Dear Lucia, I entrust my note to the goodness of someone who will post it for me. This is the second day that I find myself locked up in a cattle car with my dear ones and 200 other people headed toward a concentration camp. I have the terrible prospect ahead of me of a journey of 8 days to reach Krakow in Poland. I have a premonition, unfortunately, that this journey will be without return for me and mine. Our destiny is sealed, and without a miracle, I shall never return home. I am finally totally resigned, as are my mother and sister. Fate certainly has not been kind to me, and after subjecting me to trials that were themselves very hard, has decreed that due to the evil in men, I shall have to face something as terrible as can be imagined. Life this far has not offered me many pleasures, and even though I have encountered many difficulties, I comforted myself that ultimately even this trial would end, and I could then enjoy the beauties of life. Instead, I find myself now writing my spiritual testament. Here we no longer even have a name, just a number like animals. The train is racing along, not too swiftly, but inexorably, toward the frontier. Now I have to end this little writing, which does not have the great likelihood of getting to you. I am enclosing a brief note that will serve as my pro forma testament, and which I beseech you kindly to follow. To you I send my last and most loving greeting, remembering the beautiful hours which for an instant lit up their rays, the greyness of life. Goodbye, Lucia. Goodbye, Mino. This letter was eventually delivered to his fiancée, but Abramo sadly died in Auschwitz. And for me, it's quite relevant to read that to you tonight, because I started the week on Monday, the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz at Birkenau, sitting next to an Auschwitz survivor who came to live here in Greater Manchester after the war. Indeed, one of the Windermere boys, if anybody saw the TV programme, amazing TV programme, broadcast on Monday night. Ike, he was one of them, and he features in the programme. And to be honest, to be able to sit and listen to him, just a couple of feet from him, on that day, will, I think, be one of the greatest privileges of my life, because he was talking about his whole journey, the moment he was parted from his mum and dad, and the tears in his eyes. 94 years old, I think, but still, the emotion sprang straight up as soon as he mentioned his family. But actually, he went through the worst journey imaginable, not just one concentration camp, a number of them, and eventually found himself in Auschwitz. And 2 days before that liberation, he spoke in such a distraught way about this. He was one of those taken on the death march 2 days before the liberation of Auschwitz by the Russians. And he said that was, in many ways, the worst of all. They went through the snow with no shoes on for days, utterly emaciated, and he said that was the worst of all. But then recalled with a kind of laugh in his voice about the grabbing of the jam and bread at Windermere, and that was depicted in the television programme, that they couldn't believe, they just couldn't believe the generosity of the people when they finally came here, and indeed the generosity of the people of Greater Manchester. And just to hear all that spoken in that way was amazing. And a lot of the speakers at the Holocaust Memorial event that I organised, were referencing an article that had been in the Manchester Evening News of Holocaust survivors from Greater Manchester, some of whom were saying that what happened to them was so unbelievably atrocious that actually they've always struggled to have people believe how bad it was, because it was so bad. And also, another said that they are now the generation that is possibly not going to be with us much longer, and no longer people will be able to hear from them in their own words in front of people how bad it was, and therefore believe it. And he was saying to us, you've got to tell my story to those who come after me. And for me, that's the really important point here. I cited an article which appeared on Holocaust Memorial Day last year, January 2019, which said that in a survey done last year, 2.6 million British people now are quoted as saying that the Holocaust is a myth, and many millions more say that it is exaggerated. And I think that's the challenge, isn't it, particularly in these times in which we are living. The risk of Holocaust denial is growing and will grow every year with the propaganda and the fake news of social media. In fact, that's a polarising and a propagandising force, social media, isn't it, that's going to make our job ever more hard. But it's why I am sincere in what I say in thanking you for putting on this incredibly important event tonight, and all of the speakers who are here and those we've already heard from. I genuinely believe some of the things I've seen in the last 10 years, since I went to Auschwitz actually, and like yourselves, I can't believe what's happened in the 10 years since I went in about 2008. The idea that we have leaders of this country and the US making openly and blatantly Islamophobic statements. I mean, think about that. That I don't think that was conceivable if you take yourself back 10 years, but also the debate of anti-Semitism, the debate, the cancer of it that seems to sort of be growing again. I didn't think these things could possibly happen, but for the great crash of the 20s, read the financial crash of 2008, and history, as much as we say it mustn't repeat itself, sadly it does repeat itself. And there's this tendency in tough times to scapegoat, isn't there? They're all to blame. That's what lay behind the Holocaust, wasn't it? And it's something similar that we see repeating itself right now. So it's why I say these events are of fundamental importance, that we celebrate the good people of Greater Manchester who fought and died in the cause of banishing fascism and Nazism from our world, the people who welcomed those refugees here after the Second World War. And we celebrate the way in which this place wasn't divided by what happened at the arena just beside us a couple of years ago. There is, despite the darkness of our times, something fundamentally decent in the people of the city where we all live. And that needs to be held on to, doesn't it, in times like this? That spirit of genuine solidarity, that belief in diversity, in our common humanity and true and full equality of every human being. Those are the values that have stood us well, but we are going to continue to have to make a case for them going forward from here. But it's why this day, this week, where we remember what happened, where we think of those 6 million Jews who died, 6 million, and we think of the people who died in Darfur, Srebrenica. You can reel off, I'm sorry, quite a long list, because this history keeps repeating with every decade that comes. It's why it's absolutely crucial that we gather and that we do say never again, and we mean it. Thank you very much.